All right, what's up, everybody? We're back with this weird coronavirus video tutorial thing. So I hope that you are all safe and healthy and doing well, and that your friends and family are all safe. It's been a crazy time here in my house. As you guys know, I have 3 kids, and finding time to sit down and actually record this thing is difficult to say the least. So, anyway, it's almost 11 o'clock. I'm sitting here in my kitchen, which is weird, recording this thing. I've never done a video tutorial before, so hopefully you guys will have a little bit of patience with me. I've probably started and stopped this thing about 20 times already. If you hear a chair squeaking, I'm on a squeaky chair. I'm sorry. There's not much I can do about it. Let's get started. So we're going to get into Photoshop tonight. I know that we touched on Photoshop earlier in the semester, but we're going to come back around to it because the next couple of video tutorials are going to be about After Effects. And for one of the projects that I'm planning, we're going to have to actually cut some things out. And this is actually something that people ask me a lot, like how do I erase something? How do I cut out a subject and separate it from the background? How do I erase the background? Something like that. So that's what we're going to get into tonight with Photoshop. And Photoshop is made to do stuff like this, obviously. And so, like so many different tasks in Photoshop, there are probably a million different ways to do it. I'm going to show you a few of the different tools that we can use and what's good about them, what's bad about them, when to use them and when not to use them. So if you get lost or confused, pause, rewind, go back, watch it again, and I'll try to as I use some keyboard shortcuts and stuff, I'll try to remember to let you guys know what it is that I'm clicking. So let's get started. So here I have this picture of this super cool guy with a fedora, tipping his hat. And yeah, it's a pretty cool picture. And I actually picked this for a couple of reasons. One is it's really going to be pretty simple to separate this guy from the background because the background is all just one color, which is going to let us use some of the tools in Photoshop more successfully. The other reason is because if I zoom in here, and to zoom in, I use a quick command, which on Mac is Command and Space. I'm not sure on a PC if it's Control and Space or not, but on a Mac it's Command and Space. And let me actually get into Photoshop here. Command Space, and you'll see that turns my cursor into a magnifying glass, and it's got the plus icon on it. So I'm going to click in the area that I want to look at. So he's got a lot of flyaway hairs, and that's always an interesting challenge when you're trying to cut somebody out in Photoshop. So we're going to take a look at how we can maybe do that too. So now I'm going to zoom out, and to zoom out on a Mac, it's Alt Option. That Alt Option key and spacebar, and that's going to change my cursor into a magnifying glass with a minus sign in it. So I'm zooming out, and I can see right down here at the bottom what my actual magnification is. It's 50%. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more so we can see the whole image. There we go. All right, so if you remember back to the first time we did Photoshop, you should remember that here on the left-hand side of our interface is our toolbar. This is a bunch of different tools like our eyedropper tool, our clone stamp tool, the smudge tool, the dodge and burn tool, the pen tool, the text tool, all of the stuff that we do in Photoshop. Most of it starts here on the left-hand side with a tool. Up here at the top, notice, by the way, that if I hover over these icons, you get this tooltip. It's like a cool little video tooltip. Shows you what the tool actually does. So this is the move tool. This is kind of like your main tool in Photoshop for clicking and selecting. I don't need to move anything. I don't need to select anything right now. But just think of this as sort of like home base, right? And you can also see that the keyboard shortcut for that is V. Just the V key. That'll always bring that up. So let's just set our image up here so that we can erase a couple of things and talk about how to actually do this. So look over here on the right hand side, kind of lower right hand corner. I have my layers palette here, and you can see that I have this one layer. It's called background. This is my image, and right now it's got a lock icon on it. Well, I'm going to need to do some stuff with this, and so I need to unlock this. So I'm just going to double click this layer. Super simple. I'm going to make sure I'm not on the image. Actually, that works just fine. Or on, actually the whole thing just works fine. I can click anywhere. Double click, and now I've got a new layer, and I'll call this I'll call this, we'll just leave it at layer 0. Fine, that'll work. We could rename it if we want to. We're not going to. All right, so layer 0. So now my lock is gone. It's no longer called background. And because I'm going to erase stuff, let me just really quickly come down here and select an eraser tool and show you, like, when I start erasing, you can see this checkered background. And this is basically Photoshop's way of letting you know that we've erased it and there's now no more picture information, right? There's no more pixel information. It doesn't have a color. It doesn't have an opacity. It has nothing, right? So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo, and I'm going to hit Command Z to undo again. So when I'm cutting him out, that's pretty good most of the time. Like, that's easy to see that I'm erasing and it's working, but I might actually, like, kind of accidentally brush into him a little bit, and it's hard to see exactly how much of that I've done when all I'm seeing is this checkered background. So I actually want something behind my image that's going to help me see my picture a little clearer. So I'm just going to add a layer that's a solid color. So I'm going to come down here to the bottom of my layers palette, and I've got these icons here, and here I have this one that's a circle with like a diagonal line through it. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to choose a solid color. All right, so now you can see that it's made me a new layer right here called Color Fill, and I can choose my color. I'm just going to pick a bright red. It'll be really easy to see. Now, I've made my layer. Here it is. It's bright red, but remember that Photoshop is layers based, and whatever layer is on top is going to occlude whatever's beneath it, right? So I'm going to just simply click this layer, and I'm going to drag it underneath my layer 0. And now you can see that that area that I had originally erased from this layer 0, I am going to rename this. It's just going to be easier. I don't like calling it layer 0. That's dumb. We'll call it a subject. All right. So now with that layer renamed, you can see that the pixels that I had erased from the subject layer before, I'm seeing through it to my red layer beneath. And I can always turn this on, either of these layers on and off, by clicking on this eyeball here. This sort of like enables and disables the layer, right? So I can click on my red, and I can still go back to seeing the transparency information. All right, so I don't want to have this this deleted bit here, so I'm actually going to undo a couple of steps. Sorry about that. And I'm just going to step through it one more time. Again, I'll click here, solid color, make it red, say OK, drag it beneath, rename my layer subject. All right, and I'm good to go. Now I can like undo and stuff like that. So now if I like erase something, I can see my red layer behind me. There we go. All right, so let's get into erasing. So the first tool that a lot of people go to because it seems to make a lot of sense, right, is the eraser tool. So it's about halfway down the toolbar, and it kind of looks like an old pencil eraser. And if you click on this, you can see here that I have my cursor is now a circle. This is a paintbrush. It's just a round brush, and up here I have my settings for it. Remember, every time we select a tool, we get settings for it up here across the top, right? So this is it's like a paintbrush, but an eraser. And it has a size, and it has a hardness. And remember that hardness is like how firm the edge is on the outside here, right? So I just set my hardness to 100%, and I'm just going to click one time, and you see that I have this like really hard edge. And now if I go back and I'm going to set my hardness to 0%, and now I'm going to click one more time. I didn't change the brush size, it just looks smaller, and it looks smaller because I've got this like feathered edge, right? So let me undo both of those. So I can use the eraser tool, and I can just start, I'll disable this. I can just start erasing. Now, this could take a while, and I could use a bigger brush size, and I could come up here to the top and click here, and I could make my brush size 5,000 pixels. That seems way too big. And it's kind of does this weird jump from 500 to 1,000, and the whole thing's just a little strange. So here's a great keyboard shortcut. Because brushes are so common for these tools in Photoshop, a great keyboard shortcut is to use the square brackets to make your brush size larger and smaller. So the right square bracket, right, these are just to the right of the P, your P key, right? So there's a square bracket and another square bracket. Your right square bracket makes the brush bigger. See how it's getting bigger? And your left square bracket makes the brush get smaller, right? So I can increase my brush size, and I can quickly like start deleting a bunch of stuff from here. But you'll see like pretty quickly, well, if I turn this red layer back on, look, I'm kind of getting into this hat a little bit. Like that's no good. Now I could, if I undo, I could zoom in a little bit here. And I could make my brush size smaller, right? I could even make it harder. And I could like try to like trace around here, but this is like really clumsy. And then I've got to like zoom way in down here. I'm gonna make it real small. This is like the worst way ever to cut anything out. It takes forever and it's really inaccurate, and I almost never use the eraser tool. Really almost never. Now a tool that can be really handy is something called the Magic Wand tool. Right, so if I come to my toolbar, 1, 2, 3, 4 icons down, if I click and hold, I'll get a little like drop down menu here, and I can select multiple tools, and they kind of group these together because they're all related a little bit, right? So I'm going to select the Magic Wand tool. Now what this does is it lets me click on a pixel, and then it finds all of the other pixels in that image that have the same color value or similar color value, right? And so now I've got it selected. And when we have something selected in Photoshop, we get these sort of, I call them marching ants, right? Let me undo this and I'll just select something with my rectangle marquee tool here, right? I get the marquee. It's these marching ants, that like dotted line that seems to move a little bit. And anything inside of that area is what's called my selection. It's what I'm telling Photoshop I want to work with, right? So like I can just hit delete and it's gone. And so I guess that's a way that I could delete the background, right? Is I could just kind of like start selecting the heck out of things. But I think we can probably all see that like that gets old quick. Let me undo. Now to deselect, I've got the marching ants here. To get those away, I use Command D on a Mac. It's Control D on a PC. So I'm going to hit Command D and undo my selection, and now I'm going to go back to my Magic Wand tool. Right, so if I click here, what Photoshop does, it looks at all of the pixels in the image, and it selects the ones that have basically the same color value. Now, remember, we can come up top here and we can see different options for our tool. So tolerance is a really important one for the Magic Wand tool. So when I said that I click on an area and it selects all of the pixels of the same or approximately the same value, that approximate is found in tolerance right here. So right now I have my tolerance set to 10. If I set my tolerance to 0 and I click on a pixel, actually it seems to kind of work okay. No, it works horribly. Look, I just click there and I get only a couple of pixels are actually flashing because it's looking for pixels that are exactly the same. I don't want that. I want to get, because even though this is a solid background, it's not exactly the same in every pixel, right? So I'm going to go back. I'm going to set my tolerance to like 30. I feel like that's always kind of nice. No, that's terrible. It's way too much. Look at that. It's selected like his entire face. What did I have it at before? 10? Let's go back to 10. Hey, there we go. 10's nice. We like 10, right? So I can select, and I can hit delete. I can select another area. I can hit delete. I can select another area. I can hit delete. I can try to get all this stuff. I can hit delete. Cool. Now, let me just stop there for a minute. All right, now that was pretty quick, right? And if you look around the edge of his jacket here, it did a pretty good job, right? That's not too bad. His face, now the skin gets a little funky, right? Because his skin was sort of the same color as that background. They have a similar kind of light mid-tone brown color to him. But then look when we get around his hair. Oh, that's awful. And look at this. It found a couple of pixels in his forehead. And we lost those. And I think we did the same thing here in the middle of the hat, right? Let me zoom back out. and the hat, and here in his forearm, right? So like it wound up selecting too many pixels. So let me undo all this. Let me zoom back out. Undo, undo, undo. And deselect everything, right? So there's another setting up here that's really important. I'm going to come back up to the top, set my tolerance to 10, and now there's this check button here, contiguous, right? So think of like the contiguous United States. It's the 48 that are all like touching, right? So if we select contiguous pixels, then that means that it will look for all of the pixels that meet the criteria and are within the tolerance, but they all have to be connected to each other. So it won't select a group of pixels from here and then a group of pixels from here. So look, if I click it, it's all kind of like, it's maybe sort of tough to see because I don't remember exactly where it was that we lost those pixels here and here, right? But like, if I click, and now it's done a decent job of selecting, I can actually add to this selection, and I can hit Shift and click. And look, now my selection's expanding, right? I can click in here, and I can click over here, maybe click here, down here one time, and now I've pretty much down here in this lower corner, just to end it off, top corner, there we go. Now I've pretty much selected everything, and I've got contiguous, and so I don't have any of this, like I don't have any marching ants in here. I'm not going to lose any information in the hat or in his forearm and his forehead, right? So we just hit delete. Boom, there we go. All right, and then I'm going to hit Command D to deselect. Now again, it didn't do a terrible job everywhere, like kind of right around the edge of his jacket. Now we've got a little bit of like it's 1 pixel type of ring around it that has a little reflection of this color. We missed a spot here, so let me just come in and click, hit delete. There we go. Deselect. All right. Now see, like this is why the magic wand tool like pisses people off, right? Because you just miss all these little pixels, right? So I could just come grab my eraser tool now and like erase them. Cool, that works. But if I want to come in here and start erasing hair, that looks no better really than like the bad job that the magic wand tool did around his hair. Right? Oh boy. I left this little bit. I'll just magic wand tool it out. All right, zoom back out. So like I would say, like this is the hair's really bad, guys. Everything but the hair, it's not that bad in this situation, right? And it depends on what kind of background I'm putting it on. Like if I'm putting it on a red background, that may stand out a little bit more than if I put it on, let's say, let me change the color to white background, right? White background looks a lot better, looks a lot like more natural, right? Hair still looks terrible. If we do a black background though, we're going to see a little bit more like of that kind of like highlight running right around the edge of our subject, right? So light color seems to work there. Okay, let's go back to red. Magic wand tool works okay. Now let me start undoing a whole bunch of things. Get us back to where we were. Deselect everything. Great. All right, what's the next tool we want to look at here? So let's scroll down a little bit. And am I ready to go to the pen tool yet? Sure, let's do it. Let's go to the pen tool. All right, the pen tool. The pen tool is super, super powerful. It's crazy amazing the things that you can do. It lets you draw really precise lines without having to be like an artist and without having to actually like trace it with your hand. Remember when we were trying to erase things with the eraser and we wanted to like trace it exactly? Like I can't draw. I suck at that. There's no way that I could do that, right? The pen tool lets me like actually draw really, really precise lines, but it takes a little bit of effort to learn how to use, right? So let me show you the super basics. So what we do with the pen tool is we draw points. We click on the image and we draw points. And when we draw the next point, it makes a line, right? So I'm just gonna like literally, I know that I was saying, oh, look, I can draw such precise lines. And now here I am drawing like the least precise shape in the history of the world. But I'm just trying to illustrate, like, I'm just illustrating, right? And now I can mask this off by adding a layer mask. No, I can't. I have to convert it to a selection first. Sorry. All right. So what I've just drawn with the pen tool here is called a path. And just like I have layers in Photoshop, I also can like have paths. And right now I've got this work path that I've just cut out, and I can actually come down here to the bottom of this, and I can hover over it, and you'll see that it'll say load path as a selection. Boom, there we go. Now we got our marching ants. And now instead of hitting delete, because I don't want to delete that, I want to delete like everything outside of that. One of the things that I really like to do is I like to make a new layer from what's inside of my selection. So I'll come up to the top here, and I'll click on layer, I'll say new, and then I'll say layer via copy. I'll do copy for this one, right? And so what that does is it gives me a new layer, and if I look at this, all this layer has on it is this. Now I've still got my original layer, it exists, and if I just turn this one on and off, you won't see a difference, but I've got this new layer. Now the pen tool, I just drew like the absolute worst shape in the world. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. I'm gonna turn this layer back on. All right, so that's how you can just draw straight lines. Click, 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 click. But you can also draw curved lines. And you draw curved lines, it's called a Bezier curve, right? And you kind of have to like see it. So I'm gonna click on a point. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit here. Let's just try to make this like curved and sort of, I'm not trying to be exact here. I just want to go around the basic shape, right? So I'm going to trace up around this hat like this. So I'm going to click and drag just a little bit. Now I'm not actually making another point yet, but I'm dragging out these handles, and these handles control a curve, right? So now I'm going to I'm going to make my next point, and already I've got a little bit of a curve here, and I'm going to click and drag again. And you'll see that I'm clicking and holding this. I can move this handle around, and the shape sort of goes with it. So I'm clicking and then holding and dragging and basically moving kind of in the direction that I want to go, right? So like I'm sort of tracing where I'm going to want my line to follow before I release my mouse. And then like I can come down here and I can click, and then so there I just try to make it like a straight point. Now I'm going to use the space bar as a keyboard shortcut here. When I'm doing the pen tool, I zoom in a lot, and then I use keyboard shortcuts for zooming in, zooming out, and then also like just moving my image within the frame. This doesn't actually move any layers, but it sort of moves it within my viewer so that I can look at different parts of the image, right? So let me go back to just really quickly drawing some curves here, zoom out. Click off the image, come up in here. All right. Oops, accidentally right-clicked and hit the wrong button. And then to close my path, when I'm basically done, I have to click back on the first point. And that does what's called closing the path. And there we go. I've closed my path. I come back over here to my paths palette. I click here to load it as a selection. And then up to the top, layer, new. Oops. So I had to stop myself because I still am over here in paths and I have my path selected. I need to come back to layers, make sure that I have my subject layer. Why is this not called subject? Make sure that I have my subject layer selected. And now I'll do layer, new, layer via copy. I've got this new layer. There we go. All right. So that's not very impressive, I think, so far, right? I mean, I'm not very impressed by the results of this. And so you may be wondering, like, why is the pen tool so powerful? You just drew a really crappy outline around the sky. So here's why the pen tool is super powerful. If I zoom in here, I'm going to do this really, really quickly, and it's still going to be pretty rough, right? But like, check this out. I can now like make my curves. I can draw this line like super, super accurately. Right, now watch what I just did. I dragged this handle out, and I've got this control handle out here. And then when I click on this next point, I've lost a little bit of control of that curve. It's sort of like diving in on the edge of this hat a little bit, like it's dipping in, and I don't like that. I want to move this handle, but if I just click right now, it's just going to make a new point, which is not what I want. I want to move this handle. So I'm going to click the Alt and Option key on a Mac, and I'm going to hover over here, and you'll see my cursor changes to this kind of like open triangle. That lets me click and move this handle a little bit, right? And so now I'm going to come back out. I'm going to keep drawing. I need to do the same thing over here. Alt key, control my handle a little. All right, let me really quickly kind of like bang out this hat. And like right now, I'm probably even zoomed in like way too far. Right, there we go. Gotta adjust that other handle there. All right, zoom out. Let's go ahead and we'll take his arm up to here. That'll work. I'm like not super zoomed in as I'm doing this, and I'm really, really approximating. But you'll see when I'm done that I'm like, my approximation is going to wind up being like pretty accurate, I think. Usually is. Close my path. Got one little section over here, but whatever, I don't care. That's fine. Selection, back to layers. Got that selected. New layer via copy, which the keyboard shortcut for that is Command J. It's usually what I use. All right, so turn these two layers on. Here we go, zoom out. All right, I missed a little bit right there, but you'll see like that the edge of this hat looks pretty good. I don't really have any reflection from the outside coming. I missed a couple spots in here. If I was doing this for like a client, I definitely like would have spent more time making this like super perfect. And I don't have time to like do the whole guy really right now. But I think you can see how you can really get in close and like you can select the curves of these jackets. You can be really, really pinpoint precise, which can be super, super helpful. Except when it's not. And let's talk about a time when it's not, right? Let me delete the current work path that I have going. All right. There's no way that I could like trace around all of this guy's hair, right? It's crazy. And even if I spent the time to do it, I mean, you literally have to get in here and like, look, either I'm going to cut away all of these hairs, these like flyaways here. I can just like cut everything else out and kind of stick with like the main shape of his hair, right? But like I've still got all of this stuff on the inside. it, the pen tool just, it doesn't work for hair. It doesn't work for like those flyaway hairs, right? It works for nice, clean, hard edges, and it gives you total control. Times when maybe like the magic wand tool wouldn't work because there's a highlight on somebody's shoulder that is white and they're on a white background, right? And so you use the magic wand tool and it winds up selecting like into her shoulder because they are contiguous, right? There are times where the pen tool can be really the only tool that works. All right, let's delete my bad cutout hat layer. So what does work for hair, right? Well, let's do, I'll tell you what, let's do let's look at some hair. What's a tool that we can use for hair? So let me come back over to my eraser tool, right? I'm going to click on my eraser tool and I'm going to hold this time, and bundled with my eraser tool are a couple of other tools. One is called the Magic Eraser tool. It works a lot like the Magic Wand tool, except you don't have to hit delete, right? So it's got this kind of the same general rules. It's got a tolerance to it, right? So right now, let me set that to 10, and I can select contiguous or not, and I can click in here and I can really rapidly delete some stuff. Cool, pretty handy, really nice, like fast way to do something. You know, Magic Wand tool and the Magic Eraser tool are great when you want to like cut out a picture of your friend and put them on a dumb background and like make fun of them or something, right? Not always the best when you're trying to do professional work for a client. So back to my eraser tool. Let's check out the background eraser tool. And that's going to be, there's going to be a little bit of a weird cut here. I just had to pause and go tend to crying baby. No problem. I'm back. All right. Where were we? I believe that we were about to talk about the background eraser tool. All right. Background eraser tool. This has got some pretty cool features that really help with things like fine hair and stuff like that. All right. So the way the background eraser tool works is Photoshop knows that like if it was a normal eraser, you're going to have a hard time like tracing just perfectly around here. And it sort of does more than what the Magic Eraser does, where the Magic Eraser is looking for just pixels of similar colors. The Background Eraser tool looks at the difference between pixels and basically tries to like help you choose like, hey, you may not want to delete this, right? So it tries to like figure out what the difference is between the background and the foreground and like help you there. So like if I start clicking and like dragging around here, see how it's kind of like, it's like, oh, hey, look at that. You can see the difference between my foreground and my background because the color of those pixels is like so different, right? That's great when the color of my pixels is really different. It's not great other times. So this picture, it works really well, but like others, it might not, right? And then again, I might have a little bit of trouble when I get up here. Yeah, see, I start like just bleeding into some of the skin tones here a little bit. I can try to like make my brush size a little bit smaller, but it's got this area where it's like sort of tough. But where it's really good is things like hair, right? So check this out. I'm going to come up here to the top where I have my tool settings, right? My brush size, my brush size doesn't really matter. My hardness is set to 0. I think by default, this sampling, continuous sampling is selected. I'm going to do sampling once. What this does is it just sort of like wherever I click the first time, that's where it's that's the pixel that it's going to use to like figure out what is supposed to be a background, right? So if I click off here, definitely on the background, and then I start like coloring it over this. I'm going to make my brush size a little bit bigger here. All right. It looks, we've got this red background, right? So it looks a little rough, but see how it's like, it's picking out the differences here between my background and my foreground, and it's leaving the hair. And it's kind of tough to see on this red background, but it's even leaving a lot of these flyaway hairs. And I can like make my brush size a little smaller and like come in here and like see if I can maybe like do this. Come in here and see if I can like delete a little bit of that. Right, brush size bigger again. Maybe like come over here, see if I can get some of that inside. All right. And I keep coming off and like clicking on it because it's a one-time sampling. So if I release, if I click and then drag around a little bit and then release, I have to click back on a background color again. So I'm going to click again. I'm just sort of like waving it around in here, and you'll see that it's doing a fairly decent job of separating out his hair. Not too shabby. Again, we've got this red background. It's making it, it's really making that like kind of skin tone highlight that's just getting left behind. It's making that pop a little bit and look really kind of like ugly and bad. But first of all, I think it's going to be fairly rare. Oops, I got into his ear a little bit there. Let me come back and there we go. I think it's going to be kind of rare that you're like actually putting something on a bright red background, which is like a really tough color to deal with. But look what happens if I change the color of my background from red to like white. You can see like I've left all these flyaway hairs. They're all still here, and they don't look bad. You don't get like too much of that like leftover color from this like beige background, right? It did a really nice job here, and even it doesn't even have to be white. Let's see, it could even become basically like anything in the lighter shades. It's gonna look pretty good, like a pink. I don't know, like a pink background. I don't know, how does blue look? Blue looks pretty good too. Now, the more saturated and bold we get, the easier it becomes to like see the kind of the imperfections in this, but it's still not terrible at all. So here we go. I'll just do a white background here, right? And let me zoom back in, select my subject layer again, get my background eraser tool, and like start just finishing up the last of this hair here. All right, zoom back out. Now his hair's cut out pretty well. Maybe I'll just do my, just to be quick here, do my magic eraser tool. No, I won't, because I don't really like it. I prefer the magic wand tool. I like to be able to like change settings or change my mind. All right, this selection's pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Add right here in the middle. Get that. All right. I hit delete. And deselect. All right, now I've got this stuff left over here. This is a perfect time for my eraser tool, right? I don't need a lot of precision. I just need a big brush. It's going to just like erase really quickly. Right? Now if we zoom in on the hat, it's imperfect. Maybe then I might use my pen tool to like come in here and maybe like refine that shape a little bit. For what I'm doing right now, this is fine, right? This guy's decently cut out. Uh-oh. Missed corner. Eraser tool. Zoom in here. I see a little bit lingering. Now I'm going to use my background eraser tool, right? Because I want it to see the difference. There we go. All right. Zoom back out. Another little section there. Background eraser tool. switch over to my regular eraser tool. Got to see, you got to be careful with that eraser tool. There we go. All right. Now, normally I probably would have like done most of this with the pen tool. I've gotten all of this hat with the pen tool. I've done all of these edges with the pen tool just to make sure they're absolutely perfect and I don't get like any of this. See this sort of like frayed edge here where it's like left a little bit. The pen tool, I don't ever have to contend with that. But the pen tool also takes a lot longer. Cool, right? He's decently cut out there. That works. We'll call that a win. Let's see. Let's give him another background here. I'm gonna come over. I got this cityscape thing. They're not gonna match like color wise, but so, hang on. Cancel. Double click this layer to turn it into a movable layer. I'm gonna select my move tool. I'm gonna click this layer and start to move it, and I'm gonna hover over this tab and then just drop my picture on. And then I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Make sure this layer is selected, and I'm gonna hit Command T. This lets you like change the size and like rotation, and if you hold Shift, it will scale up proportionally. Right, so let's put it. Let's do that. That works fine. Hit Enter to get out of free transform mode. Drag this layer beneath, and boom, there we go. Now we got a super cool hipster guy with a fedora in like some back alley in Brooklyn somewhere. I don't know. We will have more of these video tutorials coming in the next couple of days. We're going to move on to After Effects, but with After Effects, we're also going to be coming back into Photoshop. So if you're interested in After Effects, please watch this video and definitely like take the time to play around with the tools. I got these pictures off of a website called Pexels.com. It's free. It's got tons of free stock photography that you can use to play around with. I think if you want to use it for commercial work, you have to buy a license. But other than that, it's like just this massive library of stock photos that you can use. So go find a couple of pictures. Try to get some high resolution pictures, some like really large sizes, not something that you downloaded off of Photoshop. Downloaded off of Facebook. Those are going to be like really small sizes, and they're going to have lots of compression, and they just don't work well for photoshopping. So go to Pexels.com. I'm not supporting them, but I am, because they're awesome. I just found them and they're awesome. Go find a couple of photos. Find something that gives you some flyaway hairs to deal with. Look for different kinds of backgrounds. Play around with the pen tool. Play around with the different tools that we talked about tonight: the magic wand, the eraser tool, the magic eraser, and especially the background eraser for taking care of hair, and also play around with the pen tool. And we will get back to cutting things out when we deal with I think our second After Effects video. So anyway. I wish that we were all sitting in a classroom together. This is definitely a lot easier when I can like see the looks on your faces, and not have to imagine the looks on your faces, because you're all much more polite in person than you are in my head. So anyway, thanks for being patient with my first video tutorial ever, and I will talk to you all soon, and we'll send out some more of these coming up. Bye.